May I speak in the name of the holy and undivided Trinity, the one God. Amen.
Amen.
Every week, when our fabulous younger members are not in church at this very moment, and as they especially are today, every week they have a gathering time downstairs in St. Dunstan's Chapel. And every week they have this marvelous spiritual practice of asking one another, where did you see God this week? Where do you see God this morning? And perhaps in our youth that seems like an easier practice to take on. We might say, I see God in a butterfly. I see God when I look in the face of someone who loves me. I see God when something really wonderful happens that I had not expected. And as we get a little older, and as we perhaps get a little more experience, it seems harder to ask that question, to do what the psalmist promises, your face, O Lord, will I seek. And part of that is that as we get a little older and as we become a little more experienced, we become more and more privy to the suffering within and around us. We hear news like that of this past week of people coming like us to worship God, and a space of sanctuary and holiness becoming a space of trauma and violation. And suddenly it becomes a much harder question to ask, where did I see God this week? Where do I see God now? It's a question that we don't want to really sit with if there isn't an easy answer. It's not a question to linger with, especially when there is discord within one's own self, within one's family, and certainly within the world around us. And as much as it's an unpleasant question to sit with, we might also feel so utterly powerless in the face of it, such as to think and wonder, well, what on earth can I possibly do? And that is where the slightly older members among us, with their little bit more of experience and their slightly greater age, have something to tell us this morning. Because as it turns out, God says, I don't need you to be or do anything extraordinary. You can be very gifted and talented, but frankly, it doesn't make any difference to me. Because I will love you just as much, whether you have a great job or no job, whether you or your children went to a community college or a private school or no school at all. I will love you just as much. And I will work in you and through you just as much as anyone else in this world. And part of this Lenten season for us is a reminder that that embrace that Christ offers in our gospel reading this morning when he says, how often have I desired to gather you in the way that a bird gathers her nestlings underneath her. That desire has not gone away. Jesus still desires each one of us as much as he ever has. And rather than Lent then being a time where we somehow make ourselves in the kind of extraordinary human that we think is actually capable of something, is actually capable of changing and saving and healing. Rather, God invites us to seek God's face within our own humble, monotonous, and broken selves. To be assured that God is not just over here, waiting for us to find God. That exactly where we are, with all of those boring and marvelous details that make up our life, God is in there. And God is in you, and God is in me. And that seeming so ordinary body, that ordinary set of hands that looks the same today to me as it does every day, are just the same instruments that God can use to work miracles, not just at Easter, and not just someday, but right now, and right here. And right now and right here, we have some beautiful children of God that, as part of their Lenten practice, have been singing and making music to the Lord, as the psalmist says, and who cannot wait to show you what they have to offer. And so I invite you to enjoy the good news of God proclaimed not in 2 spoken readings this morning, but 6 different biblical passages that will be sung to you to remind you of who God is and what God has done. And at this point, I'll also invite the beautiful children of God seated around the altar, the clergy and those serving, to make their way and join the congregation so that you have a beautiful seat from which to behold this good news. Amen.